Hello and welcome to Star Diary, the podcast from the makers of BBC Sky at Night magazine. You can subscribe to the digital edition of the magazine by visiting iTunes, Google Play or Apple News, or to the print edition by visiting skyatnightmagazine.com.
Greetings, listeners, and welcome to Star Diary, a weekly guide to the best things to see in the Northern Hemisphere's night sky. In this episode, we'll be covering the coming week from the 30th of December to the 5th of January. I'm features editor Ezzy Pearson, and I'm joined on this week by astronomy writer Katrin Rayner. Hello, Katrin.
Hi, Ezzy, and may I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
And a Happy New Year to you too. Speaking of which, what do we have to look forward to in the night sky in the very first week of 2025?
Well, Ezzy, as we say goodbye to 2024, I'm sure many of us look back on the year with mixed emotions. You know, certainly for me, it was a challenging year in my personal life, but not to sound cheesy, astronomy remained a constant and a good friend. And yeah, my highlight was definitely seeing the aurora twice. And, you know, I really enjoyed the peace and solitude that brought, and just spending time in the garden in the early hours when no one else was around was just lovely. Yeah, do you have any highlights of 2024?
Highlights of 2024. I think, to be honest, it's a very simple thing. It was seeing the planets at the end of the year.
Okay, yeah.
Jupiter and Saturn shining so brightly because, especially in the last couple of weeks, as I've been walking home, they've been up in the night sky and you see them brightly. And that was always just a nice thing to see as the sky was starting to get dark.
It's gone out with a bang, isn't it, 2024 with the planets?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm glad that you've enjoyed seeing them.
I'm sure for many other people, comets and aurora and other things will be high on their lists of things that definitely made the headlines this year.
That's it, yeah. I mean, I don't talk about the comics. I never got to see it, so it didn't happen.
It was a bit of a challenge from the UK, unfortunately. See all these fantastic pictures of other people managing to take this comet, but for us, when it was its most spectacular, it was below the horizon, and by the time it got high enough for us to see, it was a bit trickier.
And I was very hopeful that I'd see it from the front garden, and maybe I should have just not been so lazy and driven somewhere a bit darker, but there we go. Just one of those things. But yeah, I mean, you know, we do have a lot to look forward to this year. So if we've got time at the end, I'll give a very quick breakdown of what 2025 brings, but I'll just start with this week. So in summary, we've got a new moon, and as the week progresses, you know, it's starting to wax again. It's also in full occultation mode this week and this month, in fact. And we have plenty of planets to spot, which you'll be very happy to hear. And the annual Quadrantid meteor shower to keep an eye out for. So, as usual, start with the moon this week, and our celestial neighbour is hiding a planet or two. And when the moon goes in front of a planet, if you like, it's called a lunar occultation. So we do have a big one this week. So we have a new moon on the 30th, and the skies are going to be lovely and dark as we wave goodbye to 2024. And anyone with a new telescope who is keen to get out and observe can enjoy the darkness. Having said that, Ezzy, I think for beginners, pointing their new telescopes at the moon is probably one of the easiest targets to observe in the sky. So yeah, it's not going to be a great start of the week because we won't be able to see the moon very well at all. The next full moon isn't until the 13th of January, but as the new moon waxes to the full moon, hopefully anyone with a shiny new scope will enjoy spotting it. So yeah, if anyone had a new telescope for Christmas, don't try and start off by looking at some nebulas in the sky. You might want to wait till you can see the moon to get some use out of it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely trying to, if you're just getting started, go with the things that are easier.
That's it.
There's plenty of time to move on to trickier targets once you've got the basics on things that quite hard to miss the moon. Unless it is completely new or a very, very thin crescent, it's usually fairly obvious in the night sky.
Yeah, and I also think it's one of those objects that when you do see it for the first time through a telescope, it's like, wow, it has the wow factor.
It is completely different. You think you know the moon quite well because you see it every night in the night sky. But when you do get that close-up view of it and you suddenly realise just how, like the first people who looked at the moon through a telescope must have been absolutely blown away.
Yeah, probably fell off backwards off their chairs, didn't they? So yeah, please no falling off chairs if you are sitting down looking through your new telescope at the moon. On the 3rd of January, we have a thin crescent moon teaming up with brilliant Venus. Venus is going to look magnificent. It's shining at a magnitude of -4.2. It's going to be really dazzling. And as darkness falls, if you look towards the southwestern sky, you will see Venus and the moon together. I think it's just going to look totally magical. So yeah, the 3rd of January for that lovely pairing. And on the 4th, Ezzy, we have a treat tonight. In the south, the 25% lit waxing moon is going to occult Saturn from 5:13 p.m. when the ringed planet is going to disappear behind the moon and emerge just over an hour later at 6:20. So that's definitely one that I will be having a nose at for sure. The times are going to vary slightly depending on your location in the UK, so just be aware of that. And the best thing, you're not going to need any equipment to see this occultation because Saturn is visible to the naked eye. It's going to be a magnitude plus 0.8. And of course, the moon visible to the naked eye. But if you do have a telescope, you will, of course, be able to see a couple of Saturn's moons as well disappearing behind the moon. And there's a great article in January Sky Guide in the Skylight magazine for more details if this is something that you want to have a good look at.
We've also had a bit of a run of occultations lately.
Mm.
So if you want to find out even more information about how to see some of those, maybe take a look back at the last couple of episodes of Star Diary where I chatted with Mary about that as well.
Okay, yeah, so we've been spoilt with the occultations, haven't we?
It is. It's the moon's obviously passing through that bit of the ecliptic at the moment.
And there's more to come. Also, we've got Venus shining brightly nearby if you're wanting to go and look at Saturn and occultation. So it's going to be a lovely evening to observe this area of the sky. And we also have another occultation on the 5th of January. The 34% lit crescent moon occults Neptune, but unfortunately we won't be able to see this as it's going to take place in the afternoon. But it's always nice to hear what's going on in the sky, even if we can't see it.
There's some planets that you can just about see in the daylight sky. Neptune is not one of them.
No, definitely not. I don't think I've ever seen it from a dark sky area. So it's one that you'd need a telescope for anyways. And solar system wise, we've covered 2 lunar occultations, and I'm just going to talk about the planets now that we can see this week. And actually, New Year's Day, the 1st of January, is a great date to see most of the planets at their best. So I'll just go through each planet that's visible from early morning on the 1st into the night of the 1st. So we have elusive Mercury as a planet to try and catch if you can on the 1st, just before dawn. You're going to need a good unobstructed view of the southeast as it rises at 6:40 a.m. It's very low on the horizon, around 4 degrees. And, obviously the sun is not going to be very far behind Mercury before it washes away. So, yes, you're going to have to be up early to catch Mercury for a very short window.
On New Year's Eve, there might be some people who were still up at 6:40 in the morning.
Yeah.
Though I suspect if you're still up at 6:40 in the morning on New Year's Day, you're probably not in the best state to be going out and stargazing. As always, when it comes to watching planets in the morning, do be careful that you know when the sun's going to come up so that you don't accidentally catch it with your eyes or in any of your optics.
That's it, yes. So maybe some people stumbling home will try and try and catch it if they're on the way back that time in the morning. It's a great week for Saturn. As I mentioned earlier, we have the occultation of the planet on the 4th, but on New Year's Day is the best time to see Saturn. So if the sky is clear and you want to enjoy a glass of fizz under the stars, look to the south-southwest at 5:30 p.m. to see Saturn, which will be 23 degrees above the horizon in the constellation of Aquarius. So yeah, champagne and Saturn. I think that sounds like a lovely New Year's afternoon. You won't be able to miss Venus at this time either. So whilst it's not at its best until the 10th, it will be unmistakable in the evening sky. And you can see that just below right of Saturn, also in the constellation of Aquarius. And we have Neptune. It's also at its best tonight in the south-southwest in the constellation of Pisces, which is handily placed near Saturn. So you can use the ring planet to planet hop. It's not a naked eye target. You will need an optical aid and a stargazing app to locate the ice giant, which is best seen at 6:10 p.m. So, Ezzy, you will be able to see 3 planets in the south-southwest on New Year's Day.
Have to keep an eye out for that one.
Yes, definitely. If you're not stumbling home at 20 to 7 in the morning and going to bed for the rest of the day. But later on the evening, if you're up, Jupiter and Uranus can be spotted in the southern sky. The two planets are relatively close together, with Uranus at its best at 8:45 p.m. And then we have Jupiter at its best an hour and 20 minutes later at around 10 p.m. So Jupiter is really easy to locate. It's a naked eye target, and it reaches an altitude of 59 degrees at 10 past 10. So it's going to be pretty high up in the sky, and it's unmistakable really at this time of year. And as ever for the dimmer planets, it's going to be beneficial to have an app to help you locate them. And I think the only planet we haven't spoken about is Mars, so we can't miss out poor old Mars. It's visible all week and rises just before 5:30 p.m. and it's going to be at its best on the 12th, but I'll talk more about Mars next week. So good planetary observing this week for you, Azzy.
Does sound like there's some really good ones to be able to get to grips with.
Yes.
So have some nice walks home, hopefully.
Yeah. On the 3rd of January, we have asteroid 14 Irene. It's at opposition and also perigee. So the asteroid can be located in the constellation of Gemini, the twins, but most specifically Castor. And it's going to be visible above the horizon for most of the night. It's going to reach its highest point in the southern sky at midnight. Now, Irene, it's not an asteroid I'd actually heard of before. So it's a main belt asteroid and has a mean diameter of around 152 kilometers. So, it's pretty big.
I mean, well, if it's asteroid 14, that means it was the 14th one that was discovered. So it must be fairly big and fairly bright.
Yeah, 152 kilometers. It's pretty sizable. But although it's big, obviously it's very far away. So it's going to be just over magnitude +9, and it's going to look really quite small. So you will need an optical aid to spot it. And of course, to find the chart will come in really handy for those that want to get out and try and have a look at it. And annoyingly, I had the Come On Eileen song in my head when I was looking at Irene. So I was chanting Come On Irene whilst I was making my star diary notes. So yes, that's going to be in everyone's head now.
Well, fortunately, due to copyright infringement issues, you will all be spared us singing that song, but
Yeah. But you can go away and sing it in your own time. So yeah, that's going to be going around my head even after we've done this recording. But moving on from Irene and moving to Earth now. On the 4th, it's not an observing opportunity because we are on Earth, but it is an interesting point to note. So Earth is going to be at perihelion on the 4th. So quite simply, Earth will be at its closest point to the sun, a mere 147 million kilometers away. And Earth is always closest to the sun in January, and its furthest point or aphelion in July. And, this is down to the elliptical orbit of our planet around the sun. And believe it or not, we are actually receiving more radiation from the sun in the winter than the summer. But of course, not the warmth, unfortunately.
At least not for us here in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yes, that's true. I was just too busy thinking about us in the north, but yeah, down in the south they're having a jolly old time with barbecues. And
unfortunately, it's the amount of time that the sun is shining on you rather than how much shinier the sun is.
Yes.
That's not the right word.
We know
how
what
much
you
more
mean.
intense the light from the sun is.
Yeah.
That's much more important.
Unfortunately, we've still got a few more months to go, haven't we, before we get some warmth, but there we go. And meteor shower-wise, from the 3rd of January into the 4th, we have the Quadrantids. This is a really good year to see them, as the moon will be setting at 8:30 p.m. and it will only be 11% lit anyway, whilst we see it in the sky. And the Quadrantids are one of the best meteor showers of the year, and on a clear night, we could see up to 110 per hour. But on average, it is more likely to be around 25. But, I still think that's a pretty good number. And yes, the Quadrantids has a sharp peak. It lasts for a few hours, and they are really well known for the bright and colourful fireballs that are produced. So these meteors originate from debris left over from comet 2003 EH1, and they appear to radiate from the constellation of Boötes, which is visible all night long. Now, I remembered from the last time we spoke, Ezzy, we were discussing how to pronounce
Boötes.
Yeah.
Some people say booties, some people say boötes. I'm not entirely sure which one is correct.
I kind of say booties in my head, but then I was like, no, Ezzy says boötes, so remembered that for the episodes. And I was really intrigued, actually, because it kind of came to me, when we talk about other meteor showers throughout the year, like the Orionids and the Geminids, we know that they originate from constellation of Orion or the constellation of Gemini. And I was like, well, where did the Quadrantids name originate from? Because I don't ever remember looking at a Quadrantid constellation. So yeah, it was just really interesting to read that the name originates from a former constellation called Quadrans Muralis. I think that's how it's pronounced, which is now part of Boötes constellation. So yeah, that was, quite interesting to read while I was doing my research. You learn something new every day.
Yeah, it's kind of the idea of a former constellation that isn't used anymore. But there's quite a few out there.
Yeah, I did stumble across another one. I can't remember which one it was now.
So back before everything got standardized, people used to use lots of different constellations because they came from different cultures or they made up their own. And it was only in recent years that they sort of become standardized. So there are a couple of constellations out there that just don't get used anymore.
I know, it's a shame, isn't it? Wasn't there, was it called Felis? There was a constellation, the cat, named after the cat.
That does sound familiar, yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame. Maybe they should just have a competition to rename some of the constellations. It'd be a bit of fun. Maybe not to be used, but it would be good fun. So the Quadrantids, the night of the 3rd into the 4th, hopefully it'll be a good year this year if there's no cloud hanging around. I'd just like to end quickly, the year ahead. What have we got to look forward to in 2025? I'll just go through, I picked out a few key events throughout the year. So as I mentioned, we have the Quadrantids in January. We have a close approach of the Moon and Mars to look forward to. In March, we have a partial solar eclipse visible in the UK. And there's also a lunar eclipse earlier in the month. And we also have Saturn's ring plane crossing as well. So I'm sure we'll be having some news in the sky at night about that. As the year goes on, we've a lunar occultation of the Pleiades. We have a minor planet at opposition, which may be a naked eye target. We've got noctilucent clouds to look forward to again, and obviously the summer solstice in June. And then July, we have Mercury, which will be at greatest eastern elongation. And yeah, we have a total lunar eclipse in September, which I think will be absolutely fantastic to see. I look forward to that. October, we got 3 meteor showers to look out for. We have the first supermoon towards the end of the year. And then, of course, we're ending 2025 with the winter solstice and some Saturn moon transit. So lots to look forward to this year, Ezzy.
Absolutely. And if you want to make sure that you get all of the details for all of those highlights, do subscribe to the Star Diary podcast and we will bring you the highlights every single week. But to go over this week's again, on the 1st of January, it's a brilliant day to see the planets at their best this month. Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus are all going to be on show. On the 3rd, a thin crescent moon teams up with the brilliant Venus, and asteroid 14 Irene is at opposition and also at perigee. From the night of the 3rd into the 4th, the peak of the Quadrantid meteor shower will also happen. And then on the 4th, the 25% lit waxing moon occults Saturn from around 5:13 p.m, when the ringed planet will disappear behind the moon, emerging just over an hour later at around 6:20 p.m. And also, the Earth is at perihelion on that day as well. So lots of things to look forward to, and hopefully we'll see you all back here next week for even more stargazing highlights. From all of us here at Sky at Night magazine, goodbye. If you want to find out even more spectacular sights that will be gracing the night sky this month, be sure to pick up a copy of BBC Sky at Night magazine, where we have a 16-page pull-out sky guide with a full overview of everything worth looking up for throughout the whole month. Whether you like to look at the moon, the planets, or the deep sky, whether you use binoculars, telescopes, or neither, our Sky Guide has got you covered, with detailed star charts to help you track your way across the night sky. From all of us here at BBC Sky at Night magazine, goodbye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Star Diary podcast from the makers of BBC Sky at Night magazine. For more of our podcasts, visit our website at skyatnightmagazine.com/podcasts or head to Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite podcast player.